Hello and welcome to Colred Plays Raid Shadow Legends. I am Colred. Thank you for joining me. In today's video, I am going to talk about how to make progress in the mid-game. Now, there's no doubt about it, Raid's mid-game is a grind fest, and it may feel like progress slows to a complete crawl. But players who can transition successfully from that exciting early game period into the sort of more sedate, slower moving mid-game, those players are going to enjoy the game more, and they're going to set themselves up for a successful late game run. So in this video, I'm going to give you 4 ways to do just that. 4 areas to focus your energy and time in the game so that you continue to make progress in the mid game, and maybe it'll increase your enjoyment as well. So if you're in the mid game now, if you're in the early game and you know it's coming, or you've just been playing a long time and you're looking for some additional ways to help get your account moving again, this video is going to be for you. I hope you're ready for it. Let's get started. Just some quick channel business. I want to give a big thank you to everybody. I don't know if you know, but I have been monetized for just a few months now here on YouTube, and I actually received my very first check from Google AdSense just a couple of weeks ago. Now, I've taken the majority of that check and put it right back into the channel. So I made some purchases on Cyber Monday, one of which, the biggest of which, was a new 4K camera. So it's not a really expensive camera. It's just sort of a monitor mounted webcam, but it is an improvement over my previous camera. So if you notice any visual difference in my appearance today, that's probably the reason why. I also happened to pick up a new key light and some fancy new earbuds for myself. So that's nice. It'll kind of clear up my desk and remove some of the wires and free me up a little bit. So those are just some quality of life bonuses for me. So I just want to say thank you to everybody for their support and let you know that it is my intention to continue to try to improve the content that I'm providing to you. So once again, thanks, but also don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and consider joining our Discord community. Okay, so here I am on my Noob versus Pro account. You can see it is level 58. And I am rapidly approaching the mid game. I wouldn't say I'm quite there yet because I haven't gotten all of my benchmarks that I think I need to be in the mid game, but it's starting to feel a lot like the mid game to me. Progress is definitely slowing down. The only difference I think between where I am right now and the true mid game is that we just recently had a huge 2 times shard pull weekend, and they did all of the different kinds of shards, ancient shards, void shards, and sacred shards. So I currently have a lot of champions that I still need to build out. Typically when you're in the mid game and progress starts to diminish, one of the reasons why is because you're only pulling champions every 2 weeks, let's say. And so there's a lot of downtime where you're not focused on new champions and you just have to deal with the champions that you already have. So that is actually the first tip that I'm going to give today, which is that optimizing your current roster is a really good way to make additional progress. And I'm going to show you what I mean. Okay, so here is my roster. Now, don't take this roster as a perfect example, but I do want to say something about this roster. I have 8 6-star champions. They are all level 60. But I want to show you something. If I go to the masteries and I click through all of these champions, you can see that all of their masteries are complete. Now, in this case, with Frozen Banshee, I have one that I'm missing, but it doesn't matter because I can't pick up another mastery that would add value to her kit. So that's actually fine. And again, here I am. So every single 6-star I own has full masteries. Now, chances are if you went and did the same thing on your roster and you looked at all of your level 60 champions, there are probably a few at least that you use regularly who don't have full masteries. So one of the first things that I recommend you do is get into Minotaur, start grinding your scrolls, and get your masteries done on all of your level 60 champions. In addition, if you have any level 60 champions who aren't fully ascended, you want to make sure you get into the potion keeps, get the potions you need, and ascend these champions. Now, it's going to take thousands of energy for you to do all of this for your roster, but it's incredibly important. You probably aren't going to have a shard pull event for several weeks. And even if you do get a good champion at the next shard pull event, you shouldn't be wasting the power of the champions you've currently built. So by getting their full ascensions, you can get all of the accessories that you need. You open up all of the accessory slots, And by maxing out the masteries, you get those powerful capstone masteries, whether it's stuff like Giant Slayer and War Master, or whether it's Eagle Eye in the support tree, or whatever it is that you need to make your champion as effective as possible. Okay, so now we're going to stay with the roster for the second point. So we've optimized all of our powerful champions, and that is going to get us more power, more effectiveness in our roster. But there's another way to do that, and that is to level up new 6-star champions. Now, this is a big part of the mid game. You are going to be constantly adding level 60 champions to your roster. Remember, every time that you do that, you want them fully ascended, and you want them fully mastered, or at least most of them fully mastered for the role that they are doing for you. There may be some champions that don't require masteries, but that's going to be the exception, not the rule. So as we grind, campaign, create new chickens, and start turning our 4 stars into 5 stars and our 5 stars into 6 stars, we want to think about how we're doing that in the mid game and what's the optimal way to do it. It is not, by the way, simply pick the best champion on your roster and level that champion up. What you want to do instead is you want to focus on adding skill sets to your overall roster of 6-star champions so that you create a more versatile roster that can actually succeed in a greater number of challenges. So for instance, if I look at my current roster, I will show you that each and every of my 6-star champions does something different. I have Deacon Armstrong, who gives me an aura of speed in all battles. That's great. He's also a drop defense champion, and he has a leech on his A1. Runekeeper Dazzdirk is a turn meter filler, who is also a cleanser and a healer. Stag Knight gives me a drop defense and a drop attack, 100% AoE. He also has a slow on his A1. Taragi the Frog is an ally protection champion. Athel gives me a weaken. I don't have that anywhere else. Coldheart gives me 100% turn meter reduction, a heal reduction debuff, and a massive enemy max HP hit on her Heartseeker ability. Frozen Banshee is a great poisoner for clan boss. Shield Guard gives me a defensive damage dealer with a lot of passives where he gets turn meter fill. He's great as a campaign farmer and as a solo Minotaur champion. So each and every one of these 60s does something different than everybody else. Now, as this roster grows, I won't be able to completely add new champions or champions with completely new kits, but I'm always looking for something in addition to what I've had before. So now if I look at the 5 stars and the 4 stars that are on my roster, I can start to think about what they may add. Right now, Artak is the focus of my account. I'm trying to level him to 60 because he gives me an AoE HP burn. I do not have that anywhere in my roster. In addition, Rock of Viletide is a great legendary who gives me a block debuffs buff and a revive. So I can also use that. That would be new to my account. Creola Witcharm is an ally attack champion. Doom Priest is a healer with a passive cleanse that can't be stopped. And then I even have High Katoon down here and Apothecary, who would be turn meter fillers with a speed buff as well. Again, I don't have that anywhere in my roster of 6-star champion. So all of these champions could provide me value at 6 stars. And so I need to grind up a lot of new champions. Now, chances are you have some champions. Maybe they're not super exciting champions. Maybe they're not big names. Maybe they don't have super powerful kits. But there are some champions somewhere in your roster that could add value. One of the things that you want to do in order to decide on who to 6-star next is to take a look at the resources that you have available. Okay, so here I am in the tavern, and I just want to check out my books. And as you can see, I have 27 rare books, 8 epic tomes, and 5 legendary tomes. So what that means is I could probably afford to 6-star an epic champion. I could definitely afford to 6-star a rare champion. So again, I want the combination of a champion who's going to bring something new to my roster, but then also somebody I can get some power out of. Remember that books are kind of like masteries in that if you don't have them fully maxed out on some champions, on most champions, those champions are going to be suboptimal. One last thing to consider is, are there champions that you can run effectively at 50? So for instance, I have Doom Priest here. She's very good at 50. I have Jamarsa here. She's very good at 50. A lot of times, if you have supports, you can build them tanky enough at 50 and they can do their job well. So you don't need to level everybody up to 60 in order to get value out of them. So you may also look at bringing some champions up to 40 or 50 for faction crypts or spot usage in other places. Once you decide who you want to level up, get here into campaign and start grinding experience and food champions. So in this case, I am grinding up some champions I actually want to level up, but you also need to grind up the food champions that are going to be able to turn these 4 and 5 star champions into 5 and 6 star champions. One way to combine the first and second points of this video together for more efficiency is to actually grind experience here in Minotaur. So if you can get into Minotaur and say, bring in a couple of champions that need masteries, but also aren't at max level, like in this case, my Artak, I already told you, he's my next 6 star. I know that that's true. I am grinding him up here in Minotaur at level 40 at 5 stars, so that by the time I get him all the way up to 60, he's going to have his full masteries already. So this is a little bit of extra efficiency where we try to double dip or triple dip on our resources. We know as free-to-play players that efficiency is always part of the game, and it's one of those goals that we're shooting for. That's especially true here in the mid-game, where it's all about the grind. The more you can get for the time that you spend in the game, the better off you are. Now, just a quick note, it takes between 150 and 160 runs here in Minotaur to get one champion their full scrolls. And as you can see, it's 14 energy here at stage 15. So you're talking about over 2,000 energy per champion. And if you can get multiple champions in here at a time that are leveling up, that's just a way to get some extra silver and extra XP as you're optimizing your champions with those masteries. Okay, so now that you are starting to build out more champions, you are going to need more gear, and you are also going to need better gear for the champions that you've already got at 60. So it is time to grind gear. Now, this is going to be a place you put a lot of energy into in the mid game. In fact, I would say you're doing more grinding of gear than almost anything else. However, there are certain types of ways you can make this grind a little bit easier, a little bit faster, a little bit more successful. And so we're going to talk about those today. The first thing I want to talk about is accessories. We already talked about how to optimize your champions, you need to make sure they are fully ascended. When you have fully ascended them, you will unlock the accessory slots for the amulet and the banner. So you're going to need amulets and banners. Now we know one place you can get amulets and banners and also rings is in the Spider's Den. So you're going to spend some time in Spider. That's unavoidable, and you want to do as well there in Spider as you can. But there are also some other places, one very important place, where you can get really good accessories for relatively cheap in the early and mid game. And that is here in your clan shop. So one of the things I want to make sure that everybody is focusing on is picking up their clan quests and completing those every week so you can continue to get clan gold. Because you can come in here to your clan shop, your clan only needs to be level 5, and then you can get access to revenge accessories. Now, revenge accessories are better than normal accessories. They're stronger than the accessories that you get from Spider because they give you a 5% chance to counterattack whenever you're hit. Counterattacks, I can't think of a single downside to a counterattack. It's more damage, it's more A1 activations, and you get this all for free just by having a revenge accessory instead of a regular accessory. Now, when you come in here and buy them, they are random, but you can get 10 a week, and you should be trying to get 10 a week for the first few months, maybe several months in the mid game, because these are going to be a minimum of 5-star rare accessories. Just like regular accessories, they are faction specific, but you can come in here and collect them, and you'll see there I just got a banner for the Undead Hordes. And here is that very banner. You can see it's an epic 5-star. It's just behind me. It's an accuracy banner with speed, defense, and HP with a 5% chance to counterattack when hit. So this is an extremely good banner. Accuracy with speed is awesome. I don't know how it's going to roll just yet, but I got this instantaneously. All I had to do is make sure that I was picking up my clan quests every week and then fulfilling those and getting into my clan shop so I could pick up my 10 revenge accessories every week and start fleshing out my accessory collection. Now, whether or not I can use this immediately, this will be a powerful piece in my overall collection in the near future. As soon as I get another Undead Horde champion that can use this, this is going to be on that champion. Now, the second place you need to focus on in order to get good gear relatively cheaply is your faction crypts. Faction crypts drop forge materials, and those forge materials give you perception gear and resilience gear. Both sets are great on their own just because of what they do. But in addition, remember that Forge pieces are always at least rare rarity or higher, and you have a much higher drop chance for 5 and 6 star pieces from the Forge than you do from the dungeons. So you want to get in here to every single crypt that you can and start farming those materials. You can see that here in the early game up to stage 6, you are only going to be getting rare materials, and that will allow you to forge 3 and 4 star pieces. That's fine. If that's all you can do, you want to focus on that. But as you get past the first boss, you can see now you've got access to epic materials, and here at stage 13, now you have access to legendary materials. I've done videos on how to approach the faction crypts in the early and mid game before. You should definitely go watch those videos. They're very informative, but there's no reason why every player shouldn't be getting some value out of faction crypts. If you are in the mid game, you should be getting at least epic materials most days from most faction crypts. Again, remember that during this mid game time, you're going to be leveling up new 5-star and 6-star champions. So one of the considerations about which champion to choose might come down to faction crypts as well. And also don't neglect your epics and your legendaries who you aren't leveling up, who are in your factions, simply because they're natural 4-star and 5-star champions that you can use as extra bodies in these faction crypts. You get enough of those, you're going to get past that first boss pretty easily, even without any 6-star champions. Now, the third place where you can get some gear that isn't in the dungeons is from Doom Tower. Just like faction crypts, Doom Tower drops, or Doom Tower bosses, I should say, drop forged materials. So the forged materials that you get here are for different sets than the faction crypts, and you're going to need to know which forged materials each boss drops. Okay, so here I am in the Forge just to show you that you can actually find this out. This information is readily available. You can just click on any set and then go to the materials themselves, and it's going to show you something about how to get these materials. So you can only get magma cores from the Doom Tower, but they aren't available on this rotation. In fact, they're available from the Magma Dragon. Now, if there is a set that is in the current rotation, it'll tell you which boss has that material. So here we're going to click on this, and you can see these are Griffin feathers, and they can be acquired from Doom Tower. You can actually go there. So they're Griffin feathers. We know that they're from the Griffin, obviously. So it doesn't actually put the boss here up for you, but you can very easily find out which material comes from which boss. So you want to think about which sets you want to farm up. Guardian is a great set. Farming Griffin boss is a great choice. However, there may be some other bosses that you want to farm. So for instance, Lethal is a very powerful set here that has crit rate bonus of 10%, plus it ignores 25% of the enemy defense. So it is an upgraded Savage set. And this is available from the Dark Fae. You can see the Fae spheres here. So figure out what gear that you want to farm from Doom Tower and farm that particular boss as high as you can in Doom Tower. It doesn't have to be 100% success rate for it to be valuable, because remember, Doom Tower keys only get used when you succeed. So just one of the things to show here is that even though I'm up to this Bommel, and in fact, I should be able to defeat this Bommel relatively shortly, I don't want to farm Bommel. It doesn't matter that he's the highest champion. The forged materials that he drops are not nearly as valuable as this Dark Fae down here. So I'm either going to farm Dark Fae or I'm going to farm this Griffin, because those are the highest versions of these champions I've unlocked. Okay, so that is area number 3. Make sure you're getting into all of the different areas, whether that's doing clan quests, getting into faction crypts, going to Doom Tower, or going to the traditional dungeons like the Spider's Den, and get your gear set. Get it optimized, grind it for the future. You will need more gear as you collect more champions. So it is not simply about collecting pieces that are upgrades for your current champions, although that's one goal. It's also about getting good gear for future champions, so you don't always have to be going back into dungeons and grinding in order to build out new champions. Okay, so now you've done those 3 things to set yourself up for success. You have optimized your current roster, you have built some new champions, and you have geared everybody as well as you can. And that should be an ongoing thing that happens every day. All of that energy you're going to put into the potion keeps and the Minotaur, that's going to take weeks potentially, but it's really going to give you as much progress from your current roster as you can possibly get. So now that you've made all of this optimization, you've made your champions as powerful as possible, what do you do with those champions? Well, what you need to do is start pushing your maxes. And when I'm talking about maxes, I'm talking about every limit in the game where your roster previously wasn't strong enough to make progress. So you might go into your dungeons and you might say, okay, let's go to Spider's Den and see where we are. We're at 17. Let's go ahead and see if we can try 18. Let's go ahead and see if we can try 19. Now, all of these 4 tips kind of work in conjunction, and they can switch order. You don't have to do 1 before number 2, before number 3. You could maybe do a little bit of 3, then a little bit of 1, then a little bit of 4. So you can mix and match here. So for instance, let's say you are pushing your maxes in Spider because you are trying to get those accessories that we were just talking about, which are going to help you optimize your current 60s. But optimizing your current 60s doesn't help you push Spider because you don't have any great Spider champions. But you do have one who's not built yet. So you can say, okay, I've got a Mordecai. He's got a great AoE HP burn. That's very helpful in Spider Boss and it's going to help me get all the way up to stage 25. So let me focus on building up my Mordecai. As you build him, you get him into Spider's Den. You're going to push your maxes. That's going to allow you to get better accessories for the rest of your roster. And then as that happens, you get power in other areas. So it all works together. There's a lot of synergy here. So you don't want to get too focused on one area or the next. But what I would suggest is when you do know that progress can come from one area, commit to that progress before you move on to the next area. So for instance, get your masteries done before you start pushing Spider. Or push Spider as hard as you can, and when you run out of progress here, then go get your masteries done. Whichever way you like to do it is fine, but don't be jumping back and forth too frequently because being unfocused is a way to continue being stuck because you're not really optimizing any of the areas of your roster. Okay, so dungeons aren't the only places where you can push your maxes. We've already talked about faction wars. Push the maxes in your faction wars, see what the highest level is that you can farm effectively. In addition, get into arena and start pushing your max here. I am currently in gold 2. If I've made additions to my roster, if I've improved my champions in the arena, maybe I can get to gold 3. I want to try it. I don't necessarily need to get to gold 3. I just want to test whether or not I can. If I do get to gold 3, great. Now I can be at a higher tier and farm there. And that's going to help me in a whole bunch of ways. Pushing this particular max is going to help you push all of your other maxes because this is how you improve your Great Hall. So remember in the mid game that you are constantly gaining power if you are improving your Great Hall. It may feel slow, but over time, those advantages are going to add up. So don't neglect your daily grind here in Arena, and don't neglect your daily grind in 3v3 Arena. Just as a quick reminder, the reason you don't want to ignore 3v3 Arena is because of the Bazaar here. You can get Ancient Shards, you can get Energy, you can get Skill Tomes, you can even get Champion Fragments for a very good legendary Drexthar. In fact, I'm going to pick some up right now. Now, obviously, there are other maxes. Clan Boss, both of the Clan Bosses, the Demon Lord and the Hydra, are great to push maxes. Anytime you get a new level 60 champion or anytime you max out your masteries on any level 60 champion, you want to go ahead and see if you can push Hydra a little bit. Any improvements in the Demon Lord teams are going to help you get a higher damage total there and possibly reduce the number of keys you need to invest to get your top chest of Brutal or Nightmare or Ultra Nightmare. When you are in all of these places, whether it's Arena or Demon Lord or Hydra or just the dungeons, you want to experiment with the roster you have. You may have 8, 10, 12, 20 6-star champions in the mid game, and you want to mix and match all of those rosters, all of those champions to create interesting compositions and try out those compositions in all of these places. By experimenting, you're going to learn more about your champions and you're going to find more solutions than you thought you had in your current roster. In a lot of cases, you don't need to get a lot of new champions to make progress. You simply have to maximize the progress that is already available to you in the roster that you currently possess. Okay, so that is it. 4 areas that you want to focus on in the mid game to keep making progress. Remember that, like I said, this is a grind. There's nothing easy about the mid game. It is a long path ahead of you, but you can keep making progress there. So hopefully one or all of these recommendations are things that are going to help you feel less stuck, going to help you enjoy the game a little bit more, and are going to keep your roster and your account progressing in the direction that you want it to go. Don't hesitate to ask your questions in the comments of this video, and definitely let me know if there are any additional methods that you use that help you progress in the mid game that I can share with the community. Thanks so much for hanging out. I have been Colred, and I will see you in another video soon.